Hello 10x2. I'm sorry I can't be with you today. Over the next few days, I'm going to be recording some short videos to help you support your learning. And today we're going to annotate the very opening few pages of Much Ado About Nothing, looking specifically at Shakespeare's language, the characterization of the protagonists, and also introducing a little bit of the context that you've learnt today. From the very beginning, if we look at the stage directions at the start of Act 1, Scene 1, we can see that we've got characters called Leonato, the governor of Messina, Hero's daughter, and Beatrice, his niece, with a messenger. You can see from the epithet, governor, that we're dealing with characters of status and power. We also open in media res. Leonato literally walks on the stage and he has a letter in his hand that he's reading out loud to his family. And as a consequence, we open not with a kind of boring expositional scene, but with a kind of witty conversation that we kind of dumped into halfway through. So it already provides quite a lot of energy. Leonato says that he learned in his letter Don Pedro of Aragon is coming to Messina, which is the place where Leonato is governor. Don, as a proper noun, is a title for a nobleman, so Don Pedro is an important person. He's essentially the Prince of Aragon, and as a consequence, it's pretty important that he's coming to Messina. It's a really good thing for Leonato's ego. He's talking to the messenger who's brought the letter, and he asks the messenger, "How many gentlemen have you lost in this action?" This interrogative includes the word action, which is a synonym for battle. And of course, at this time, the audience members would relate to such a question. In 1599, for several years, England has been at war with Spain, and the Anglo-Spanish War includes the very famous invasion or attempted invasion by the Spanish Armada. So as a consequence, the theme of war, the background of war within this scene is something that the audience find incredibly relatable. The messenger replies that there's few of any sort and none of any name. So the people who have died in the battle are people without status, without reputation. And this alliterative phrase, none of name, really emphasizes the importance of status and reputation in this play. It's going to be a key theme for us to look at. Leonato is reading his letter out. He's still reading it, and he says, "I find here that Don Pedro hath bestowed much honour on a young Florentine called Claudio." Now, this is just some exposition, some information, and here we're introduced to the character of Claudio that we're going to meet later. We've learnt that he is one of Don Pedro's favourites now, that he's now got a new title, he's got a new honour, he's now a count, so we know to expect great things from the character of Claudio. Indeed, the messenger goes on to describe how Claudio acted in the battle. Apparently, he acted beyond the promise of his age, so he acted like a much older man, and he was doing in the figure of a lamb the feats of a lion. So even though he might look kind of quite sort of slight or quite slender like a lamb, he acts like a lion. So this zoomorphism is used to compare Claudio's exploits in war to the actions of animals. And I think we could probably bring in here the concept of machismo, strong and aggressive masculine pride. Claudio has gained status and honour because of his masculine actions. I've already commented on the importance of the theme of reputation, and Leonato here says, "Well, Claudio hath an uncle here in Messina, will be very much glad of it." And what we're reminded through this verb glad is that Claudio's improved status and reputation, which he gained through acts of masculinity, are shared by the whole family. So we're really emphasising the patriarchal context of the play here. However, it's very easy just to pigeonhole, what it is to be a man and what it is to be a woman, and this can lead to oversimplification. During the 16th century, it certainly wasn't the case that masculinity was defined in the same terms as it is today, and that's evident when Leonato says that the uncle's tears are a kind overflow of kindness. There are no faces truer than those that are so washed. You can see here we've got repeated language associated with weeping, crying, with water. And Leonato's characterization here challenges the binary understanding of male gender as being unemotive. During the course of this play, emotion is something that male characters experience, and it is not something that is perceived to be emasculating. It is a part of their masculine gender. So emotional content in the play, I perhaps don't want you to see it and read it in the modern sense, where we perhaps might say today that, emotional behaviour is stereotypically female. That's absolutely nonsense for the 16th century, wherein emotion was an important part of being a man. And Leonardo really celebrates it here. There's also this really interesting line: how much better is it to weep at joy than to joy at weeping? Which in modern language we might say is, well, it's better to cry because you're happy than to be happy looking at other people crying. And this is evidently a piece of foreshadowing, because the antagonist, who we'll meet later in the play, is a character who takes joy from others' pain, who would smile at somebody else weeping. We are next introduced to our two protagonists, and we hear about one of them through the first. So this is Beatrice. She is the first of our protagonists. She says to the messenger, "I pray you, is Signor Montanto returned from the wars or no?" So Beatrice is one of our protagonists, and she's talking about the other protagonist. Signor Montanto is Benedict. Montanto is like mountain. This is a phallic pun. She's basically calling him Mr. Big something. This is a phallic pun, and what she's suggesting is that Benedict thinks he's a very impressive lover. But this is genuinely in a really sarcastic tenor. She is undermining that representation of him. We also, through this dialogue, learn a little bit about the relationships between the characters. Leonardo, referring to Beatrice, calls her his niece, and Hero, referring to Beatrice, calls her her cousin. So we can see that Leonardo, Beatrice, and Hero are related, but Beatrice is slightly distanced from them as the cousin and niece. Hero explains, "Look, by Signor Montanto, my cousin means Signor Benedict of Padua." So this is our second protagonist. And whilst Beatrice might undermine his reputation as being something of a ladies' man, the messenger says, well, he's as pleasant as ever he was. So the messenger's only perception of Benedict is that he's good fun, he's a nice guy, and clearly that doesn't tally with Beatrice's view. Beatrice describes the last time she met Benedict. "He set up his bills here in Messina and challenged Cupid at the flight, and my uncle's fool, reading the challenge, subscribed for Cupid and challenged him at the bolt. I pray you, how many hath he killed and eaten in these wars? But how many hath he killed? For indeed I promise to eat all of his killing." This line is really revealing. First of all, it tells us how Beatrice and Benedict know each other. Bills is a synonym, it means weapons. So Benedict set out his weapons before in Messina and challenged Cupid. So he took out his weapon and went looking for love. I don't think I have to explain necessarily how that is phallic imagery, but clearly we can see an extended interpretation of Benedict as a kind of great lover, or certainly that's his perception of himself. However, the fact that it is Beatrice's uncle's fool who challenged him implies that Benedict's reputation isn't quite so high. The fool is an equal match for him. What follows is a sequence of two interrogatives where she asks how many he's killed because she wants to know, as she's promised to eat his victims. Well, why would you make such a promise unless you're a cannibal? Probably if you think that Benedict is incapable of doing anything effective in warfare. So Beatrice is strongly implying through these interrogatives that Benedict is not a good soldier, he's not a competent soldier, because he will never kill anybody. She would happily promise to eat anybody he could kill. Leonardo is trying at this point to mediate. He's trying to suggest that Beatrice's behaviour is not quite as shocking as it definitely would be to a contemporary audience. She points out Leonardo points out that Benedict will be meek with you. This verb means that eventually Benedict will get revenge for her criticisms. This doesn't stop Beatrice in any way, though. When the messenger tries to defend Benedict, he's done good service, lady. Beatrice responds with, you had musty victual, and he hath helped to eat it. Now, this is a metaphor. Beatrice is saying that Benedict has forced the messenger to eat those musty or rotten words up. This is what the messenger has heard from Benedict himself, and it's certainly not the messenger's own view. The messenger continues to defend Benedict's reputation, and Beatrice is having none of it. The messenger says, and a good soldier too, lady. But Beatrice wilfully mishears the messenger. A good soldier to a lady, but what is he to a lord? Now, this rhetorical question implies Benedict only appears masculine when placed next to a lady. Constantly, she is attempting to emasculate Benedict. He's not even on stage yet, and she's violently ripping into his reputation. And his reputation in a patriarchal society would be dependent on his ability to act in a perceptively masculine way. So you can see here how antagonistic she is. The messenger points out, look, he's a lord to a lord, a man to a man. He's stuffed, i.e. full, with all honourable virtues. Beatrice responds with pun or wordplay. She takes the word stuffed and turns it into a metaphor. He's no less than a stuffed man, but a stuffed man is a scarecrow. She's saying here that Benedict is just a sign or a symbol of a man. He's not a real man. She even is dismissing of the scarecrow's stuffing. Well, we're all mortal. Leonardo has to explain here, look, I'm sorry, messenger, don't mistake my niece, don't be offended by her. There's a kind of merry war between Benedict, and they never meet, but there's a skirmish of wit between them. Now, merry war and skirmish of wit are both metaphors which rely on imagery of warfare. So, relating back, satirizing the Anglo-Spanish War, which is contemporarily ongoing in 1599. Of course, what this establishes is that Benedict and Beatrice are not lovers at the beginning of the play. They are enemies. They are two sides of a war, and Benedict is her opponent. At this point, I don't know how long is left of your lesson. For your homework, and indeed you can do this as part of classwork if you've got time, I would like you to answer this question on your A3 sheet. To what extent is the opening of Shakespeare's comedy Much Ado About Nothing influenced by the context of its production, early modern England, evidence or ideas? So look back through the annotations you have just made. Pick at least one quote that you think links to the context that you've been introduced to today or in your research lesson, which we completed in room 21 last week. Make sure that you think about how the world Shakespeare was living in, whether that's the patriarchal world, whether that's the world which was, still dealing with the Anglo-Spanish conflict. How is that world kind of seeping into the play that he's writing, the characters that he's characterising in the play? And write out your ideas here. Please make sure you've got quotes. If you want to highlight it in the same colours as we did in lesson a couple of days ago, AO1, AO2, AO3, that'd be fantastic. And I will check your work on my return.